Hello, friends, and welcome back to
XingTheGap,
an intergenerational interview series where I'm the Gen X host trying to bridge gaps of understanding with two guests, one older, one younger. Today, I'm speaking with Sabaa Quao and Yara Matta. Sabaa is a career entrepreneur and business strategist, and recently the chief creative officer of Cossette, one of Canada's top communications companies. Actually, when we recorded this interview in September 2022, that last fact was still under wraps, but not anymore. Sabaa is also the founder of Wealthie, an investment and financial literacy platform for young people, which is where our second guest works as a designer. Yara Matta is a Lebanese-born, Toronto-based interdisciplinary artist and community organizer. She moved to Canada in 2015 to attend the University of Toronto and graduated in 2020 with a BA in New Media and Studio. Together, we tackle financial literacy for families, the magic of compound interest, talking or not talking about money, GenX Entrepreneurship, building resilience to weather storms, creativity as an operating system, focusing deeply versus multitasking, getting stuck, constant branding, finding reliable sources of information, epistemology, or how do you know what you know, learning from each other, and a game show.
That's why those are called soap operas.
Yeah, they had ads. Unilever presents As the World Turns, or whatever it is. But yeah, that's why.
So interesting.
So Yara, you learned a lot from this podcast. Remember that, okay?
XingTheGap.
Welcome, Sabaa and Yara, to XingTheGap.
Thanks for having us.
Let's start with you, Yara. Can you give the short story version of who you are and how you got here?
Short story version. I'm Lebanese. That's my background. And I grew up in Lebanon, born and raised there up until the age of 17, which is when I moved to Canada. So that was 7 years ago now. I moved here to attend the University of Toronto. I graduated with a BA in New Media and Studio Arts. And I am currently working as a designer at Wealthie with Sabaa. I did some marketing stuff before that, and I also have some NGO background. I have worked with different types of NGOs in Lebanon while I lived there, and yep, that's me in a nutshell.
Amazing. Thank you. And we'll talk about Wealthie in a minute for sure, but Sabaa, maybe give me the elevator pitch version of Sabaa Quao.
I am a career entrepreneur, and I sit between business and strategy and creative. I did a Bachelor of Commerce in Marketing, then studied design, and then did an MBA. So how I tackle a project sort of always dances between those two. I was born in Montreal and have lived in Toronto most of my career, but I have two sons and they were born in London, England. I started school in Ghana, but then moved back to Canada. So I've got sort of multiple perspectives. And most of my career has been building firms that have been in the sort of marketing, design, technology, and innovation space. And all the things I've learned culminated in what we're building now with Wealthie Works Daily. And it's the first time I've had to raise money for a startup. So this has been very interesting in terms of how we attracted investors while we're building something at the same time. So it's really taken a different set of skills to get here.
All right. Well, thanks for the intro. It's interesting to raise money on a project about money. I'm in the same kind of situation. I'm creating with a whole bunch of theater creators here in Toronto, a project called Money. And part of that is actually about the stories the stories behind every transaction, right? Money is a concept, and it's a very potent concept, and one that I believe through Wealthie, you try to bring to young people. So I guess I'll start with a question for you, Yara. What makes you think that kids should learn about money at that age?
So I've been learning all of this for the last 2 years through Hillary and Sabaa. This is really their entire careers have culminated to this moment in building something for this cause, which is financial literacy. It's something that I've always thought about personally, but it's not exactly finance is not exactly my background, but the way we go about it, they essentially gave me all of the basic facts to kind of understand that, yes, the average kid is 30 years behind on their investment journey and how to tackle their own personal finances and how they deal with their own spending and saving and whatnot. So I really trust Hillary and Sabaa in terms of our process and getting the information, but through research for different ages, what a kid can learn at a certain age. And we try to package that in a very kind of digestible way for people to make it accessible to people more than anything, because it's something that's not very prevalent either in North America or the rest of the world.
Thank you, Yara. Sabaa, I know you're a great marketer. What's the pitch behind it?
Okay. While kids don't have a lot of money, they have time. And if you take that time and you put those little bits in the market, that 20 to 30 years and compound interest and market growth gives them an outstanding advantage. And when we explain this to adults our age, the first thing they get is angry. Why didn't my parents do this for me? So the thinking on that is one, time and that advantage that's gained. Second, as Yara mentioned, kids form their ideas about money quite early. And when you were 3, 4, 5, 6, you might not understand, but you're surrounded by tension around money, things that you notice. And the research says that your money script or your way of moving in the world with an understanding about money is formed by the time you're 7. Think of Sesame Street and how much they do for preschool around numeracy and literacy. That's similar. If you can get that base built, there's a statistical and research advantage in the long term of building that base and those principles early.
Okay. And so, Yara, this is an intergenerational podcast, and I'm always interested in different perspectives. I'm a Gen Xer like Sabaa, and I have a certain attitude towards money. I'm wondering, you being born in the late 90s, you're kind of cusper, right? You're in between?
I'm in between. I'm born in 97, so technically a Gen Zer right at the edge, but I feel like I'm kind of half-half between Gen Zer leniencies and millennials as well. So.
All right, so I'm going to ask you to be the spokesperson for all people who are on the cusp of that generation and tell us what your generation thinks about money.
I mean, it's so varied, right? Personal finance, depending on your background. I'm lucky, having lived in Lebanon and here, to have a very diverse subset of friends. So it really, really depends, I think, on your background, your family, how they dealt with money, what you were exposed to, the conversations you had, if any. But I would say, like, for instance, in my case, I somehow started saving money at the age of 7, but no one taught me that. Financial literacy was not a thing in Lebanon. So I wouldn't feel comfortable speaking for an entire generation, but I would say it's different for every person.
And is there a different cultural view of money in Lebanon? I've never traveled there, and I don't know if it is a culture that treats money differently, conceptually or even practically.
For sure. It works in the same basic ways. Currently, there's an economic crisis happening in Lebanon and some hyperinflation. So that is outside of what I can speak to, having lived there. But for the most part, it's people don't speak a lot about money in Lebanon. It's kind of taboo or seen as a shameful thing if you're mentioning the price of something, or if you're trying, for example, to pick up dinner for a table of 10 people. It's like, oh no, it's on me. And there's this kind of sense of pride around your financial situation. And so people tend to not speak a lot about money that openly anyways.
Talking about money. They say there are 3 topics one shouldn't talk about: politics, religion, and money. All 3 involve deeply held personal beliefs, and some people don't like their beliefs to be challenged. I, on the other hand, like having things I believe challenged because it forces me to take in new information and to learn new things. I also want to be free of labels, and some of the most definitive, unshakable labels placed on us involve our views on politics, religion, and money. Is this desire for independence, specifically financial independence, a temperament thing, a stage of life thing, a cultural thing, or a generational thing? I don't know, but many people my age share it, and we like to start our own companies. Is that why you've been drawn to startups? Is this sense of independence and freedom that might be partly generational?
I actually don't think the entrepreneurship part is generational. I think entrepreneurs are kind of outliers. most people don't have that level of tolerance for permanent discomfort. But generationally, I do think Gen X is kind of accepted the fact that things might not come easy and you're still going to have to get stuff done. Baby boomers had an easy ride. I like competing against them because they're soft. Whereas Gen Xers kind of grind it out and can get through things. And when you think of from a career point of view, how many recessions have we been through as Gen X? Economic downturns where people lost their jobs again. I know people who were laid off in 3 different recessions. So I think there's a certain kind of you can get through a situation. Entrepreneurship, I still think, is just an outlier thing. It's an aberrant behavior that sends you off on other adventures.
Right. So you sort of bring up these natural busts and booms that happen. You've been through the dot-com bubble. You've been through a lot, as are people who are, I guess, in their 50s right now. So Yara, you're a little bit younger. You've lived through a financial crisis, probably at an age where you didn't fully understand what was going on. However, it was big. And now we're experiencing something else right now. Do you think part of this early investing with young people is to say that if you have enough patience and resilience to make through the ups and downs, you realize that there's a bigger picture to this, and interest is compounds for a good reason. And that if you just stick it out and weather some risk and some difficulties, that you're actually going to be better off. Is that part of the philosophy behind the stuff you do?
For sure. I totally think so. It's part of my favorite thing about Wealthie is how sustainable it is. The concept of it is so sustainable. It's built to be long-term. And I would take that lesson to anything else in life, that you'll have to weather a lot of storms in everyone's personal life, and that you go up and down in life as well. And so from there, I think it's just generally a good lesson to take something that far ahead in time and kind of build something that's made to last.
Right. So I'll switch the topic a little bit to something that really interests me a lot, because I teach it at the University of Toronto. I teach this part-time class called The Architecture of Creativity. What would you say, Sabaa, to people who say, "Oh, I'm not creative"?
Usually, somewhere along the way, they've been convinced of that or have convinced themselves of that. And unfortunately, that happens very early on. Think of when you're in elementary school and everyone's just kind of creative. And then at some point, someone says, she's really creative, or he can draw really well. And suddenly people start to believe this narrative. But that can be broken in terms of you can get people to break out of that habit if they learn that creativity is something that you can flex and train as well. I think of creativity as an operating system, saying, I don't care if I'm working on a finance problem, a design problem, a marketing problem, it's all the same. If I can apply some creativity to it, I can probably come out with a solution. I can probably come out with several, and coming out with several solutions gives me choices. Choices reduces my risk. So creativity to me is a way that you reduce your risk. There's an odd thing about that volume of ideas can be chaotic, but once you narrow down to a choice, you can make a more informed decision, but creativity becomes a driver at the top of the funnel.
And Yara, would you say you're creative?
Yes, I hope so, with being a designer, but generally, yes, as well. I think in everything, like Sabaa was saying, it's regardless of what you're approaching. And I think we're very aligned on this kind of view. Whatever type of thing you're approaching, I think you can approach it creatively if you push yourself enough outside of those kind of boxes that you've been set in throughout your life. So whether you're distinguished as someone who's creative, can draw well, or is artistic, or someone who's good at math, and then someone just sticks to math their entire life. But even within something like mathematics, you might see an equation creatively or differently than another person. So that's like a little example of how that might express itself.
Yeah, I agree. I know when I'm stuck in a certain medium that I'm working in, I tend to just bounce around to another one, and I either jump to another project in another field, and it always opens something up. It's a bit like some people get that by walking. I get it by working on something else sometimes that is in a way unrelated. I don't know if either of you work that way, or you're masters of the multitask. What would you say, Sabaa, you are? Actually, no, let me ask Yara what she thinks you are, and then I'll ask Sabaa what he thinks he is.
Saba's more familiar with because we've been working from home for the last 2 years, so I don't get to witness Sabaa in action most of the day. But I know for a fact that he juggles a lot of different things from different pillars, like something from legal to marketing to partnerships, for instance. These are all completely different verticals that he has to look at every other day. So I'd say, I don't know if it's a multitasker, but it definitely, he requires, his attention requires a lot of things.
Over to you, Sabaa.
I think I tackle each thing deeply one at a time. But like you, if I'm stuck somewhere, I'll just move to something else and go back to it. I really don't think I do two things at once because I do find that then it slips. So it's easier to just dive in deeply and be able to figure something out and not worry about getting stuck. You can always change things up.
Getting stuck. Anyone who creates gets stuck. You've probably heard of writer's block, that blank page glaring at you, or an empty canvas, or the inner critic telling you that you have nothing new or valuable to say. When it happens to me, I always pull up a quote by Martha Graham, the pioneering modern dance choreographer, writing to her colleague Agnes de Mille, who was stuck. There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all of time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and it will be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. That ties into another thing that I looked into. You used to be connected to, I believe, an online platform, and maybe it was a startup called Newsrooms, or you're still connected to that company?
Newsrooms was a company that I founded that turned into this understanding of how to use continuous content creation for brands. And basically the entire methodology of Newsrooms is underpinning how we're building Wealthie. So right. We're essentially building a media and a fintech company. And the media side is based on using that Newsrooms methodology and continuous marketing expertise.
And I was curious about what people use Newsroom for, in a sense, which is to just, because of the 24-hour news cycle, but of social media constantly happening, in a way you need to generate content. And I always push back against that idea that one needs to constantly produce stuff.
Okay. So the constant production is for a brand. A brand has to be live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It will engage with you individually, but there is no way for a brand to know when you're going to be tapping in or tapping out. And so for a brand, I think it's important to maintain that continuous flow just to attract and engage your audiences. I do agree that as an individual, if you're bombarded with a continuous stream of anything, you will no longer be productive. I don't think it's good for the psyche. So I sit in between being one of the people who turns social media into an effective marketing tool, but I am super aware of there's a bit of a beast about it that isn't healthy. And so it's constantly thinking about how to balance those two.
Right. And Yara, are you deeply connected to social media? Are you on TikTok? Are you on Instagram? What's your platform?
No, Sabaa knows this. I've been pushing back on TikTok as much as possible. It's an inevitable beast to face at some point, but I am not. I grew up with social media. So Instagram came out when I was 12. So hopped in right when it was hot and fresh. So was Facebook. Facebook was around for a few years before that. So I was always very active on social media platforms when they first started out, but then as they've progressed, as people have started using them and seeing the ways in which people have used them, it's kind of turned me off from the landscape at large. But it's a part of our world. It's important, and it's important to understand it, especially if you work in it.
I still consume most of my media on New York Times, Globe and Mail. I pay them a bit of money every month, and I absolutely stay away from getting my news in other places. And I don't even watch TV news because I think that's even more tilting towards sensationalism. It's generally not great reporting. So I listen to the CBC, Globe and Mail, New York Times. Am I a dinosaur? Is my question to either one of you. Go ahead. Who wants to go?
I don't think it's I don't think you're being a dinosaur. I think you still have to find reliable sources. And I think I consume the majority of my news from the New York Times. So even though there's a steady stream of things that I might be paying attention to just to stay relevant or contemporary or just catch things on the fly, but if I need to understand something, you narrow down to far fewer sources in terms of you trust their editorial judgment. You can find counter positions to explore. So you're not, necessarily drinking the Kool-Aid from any one source, but I still think you do have to find your reliable sources. And I would say the New York Times for me is probably my number one.
It's important to find a reliable source that you can just generally cross over, get your top highlights, things that you need to know to stay relevant, like Sabaa was saying. But then from there, anything that really is important to you, that you want to know more about, you want to dive deeper in, I would just dig deeper into different sources and more sources and kind of see what the common story is. And then that's what I take in as knowledge. And then the rest I'll speak about, but I'll say it's questionable or up for discussion.
Up for discussion. It's a nice idea that something is brought up for discussion. But more often these things are not brought up, they're dragged down into a cesspool of shit-slinging, not discussion. Polarization isn't new to human society, but it's been amplified by the experiment of social media. Many of us now live in self-reinforcing echo chambers, to the point that we don't even share the same reality anymore, let alone trust that any source of information is reliable. So what do? We can't put the genie back in the bottle, but we can try to understand how all that information floating in our heads coalesces into this thing we call knowledge. I'm wondering, Sabaa, what is your theory around epistemology, or how we build knowledge and how it affects the world?
Okay, so I'll start with my favorite phrasing or description of it is, how do you come to know what you know? How do you come to believe what you believe? And as a creative person, I think about all the things that you're churning through, but if you know how you churn through those things or how you process your creativity, you're able to make something of it. And so it's almost like saying, if you know your building blocks, then you might be able to build something better. It doesn't mean that you're stuck in any rigid pattern, but you have something that you rely on, or that you can rely on based on your core belief. It also means that it sometimes makes it easier to make decisions. So people look at some of the career things that I've done in my life saying, how did you do this? And when I encounter the situation, I kind of know my habit. And I say, no, I know why I make that decision. So I can make a very decisive decision because I know what I know, how I've come to believe certain things. And even though I can't predict the outcome, I'm confidently going to make the decision. And then I also know about myself that I will build something new once I get going. But I know that's so core to myself that when I encounter a new situation, I can be more decisive because of that sense of self and that sense of knowing my building blocks.
Yara, does that connect with you? This idea of, to me, I think of mindfulness and the whole practice, which is about being aware and not identified with one particular emotion or thought that happens to cross your mind. It's about being aware of it. It's not about ignoring thoughts or emotions. It's just kind of being on top of your mind and training it to be able to handle new situations, new choices. Do you connect with this idea of knowing how you know?
For sure. I mean, I think every human out there tries their best to come to know things, whatever those things are. And I do align with Sabaa on that kind of process that needs to happen based on a belief. So everyone has different sets of beliefs and everyone's different in a lot of ways, but they'll take that and pull it forward to come to know something new. But I think the interesting, I'm not sure this dives into epistemology, but I think generally when you get to the point where you're having a conversation, you build that belief, you come to know something, but then you put it out and it becomes something to share and to discuss with someone else, then that's where I think it gets interesting, because your ideas and your beliefs and how you come to know things gets kind of stress tested against other things, which is ultimately, hopefully, you come to know something new from there. And that's how you build upon knowledge.
And on that note, we're going to switch to the game show. Yay! We're going to throw questions. I'm going to address them to one of you or to both of you. And then if you know the answer, just blurt it out and you'll get points. And no one cares who wins because there are no prizes. Sabaa, your brother Nee is going to be remiss if I didn't ask a couple of architecture questions. So here are a couple of easy ones. Name a famous Canadian architect.
Moshe Safdie.
Very nice. Name a casino in Las Vegas.
The Sands.
And name one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world.
The Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
You're good. Oh, wow. You get 3 points right away. I won't ask you any architecture questions, Yara. I'm going to switch to, these are a couple of TV questions, starting with name an American Idol winner.
Adam Lambert.
Nice. Which cartoon had the catch song, I'm a map, I'm a map, I'm a map?
I have no idea.
Sabaa?
No idea.
Soy Dora. Dora the Explorer.
Oh, right.
The map, that stupid map that
My
had
kids would know that.
I watched that in French, to be fair. So
you watch it in French. Je suis une carte, une carte. I don't know what it was, but probably. Another TV question. Which Disney TV show made Selena Gomez famous?
Wizards of Waverly Place.
Good one. Would you have got that one, Sabaa?
Nope.
Actually, this is also for you, Yara. Why are soap operas called soap operas?
No idea.
Sabaa?
They were the original sponsors of television shows, and brands like Unilever might have been the company that invented the soap opera. And because they were the sponsor of those kinds of téléromans or whatever you call them, that's why those are called soap operas.
Yeah, they had ads. Unilever presents As the World Turns, or whatever it is. But yeah, that's why.
So interesting.
So Yara, you learned a lot from this podcast. Remember that, okay? And last question for you right now is name a sitcom from the 1970s. I'll expand it to the 1980s. Or the 1990s.
Okay, Simpsons.
I'm going to throw a little political question at you, Sabaa. When was the Lebanese Civil War?
I remember footage from the 70s. I don't know, maybe it would have been the 80s. I remember constantly hearing about the militias and the different conflicts that were going on. It's why I would probably know the city name Beirut was from news of the war, but I can't pinpoint the exact timing of it.
Well, you're in the range, so I'm going to give you a point, and Yara, you're going to maybe get another point if you can give me sort of a range of when the years were. Do you remember or no?
Yes, I do. It's either 1975 to 1990. No, that's it. Actually, I think.
Ding! You got it. You got at least what Wikipedia told me. So trust your online news sources. So history question for you, Sabaa. Which Canadian civil rights icon is on the $10 bill?
Viola Davis? No.
No. Yara's gonna steal. You had it you were so close, but I can't give you that point. Desmond.
Viola Davis.
That's right. It's a great story. This is for Sabaa again. What does Lady Gaga call her fans?
Little monsters?
Ding. Name a member of One Direction. Sabaa.
Don't know.
Yara?
Harry Styles.
Ding. Sabaa, when was the loonie introduced in Canada? You'll be within a couple of years.
I would guess 1980.
1987. Not going to give you that one. Yara, when was the toonie introduced in Canada?
1990.
1996. Close. Yara, what does NFT stand for?
Non-fungible token.
And do you know what the most expensive NFT ever sold was?
Yes.
It keeps changing, of course, but yeah, what do you know of?
What's the latest one that we wrote about? The most recent one is not the most expensive one, but so no.
Name one recent one.
The Top Shot NFT, but for LeBron James, the moment it sold for $208K.
Well, there's the ones that I researched were one by PAC called The Merge for 91.8 million, and then another one by Beeple called Every Day's the First 5,000 Days, $69.3 million. Have you purchased any NFTs, either of you?
Nope.
No.
Neither have I. No surprise. Sabaa, what does CDO stand for in financial product terms?
Oh, those were the when the financial crisis happened, there were these packages of mortgages, and I just can't remember what the letters stand for, but they were the cause of that financial crisis.
That's right, exactly. These terrible products called collateralized debt obligations.
Yeah.
I can't give you a half point for that, though, unfortunately. Although I really liked the way you worked around that question. That was good. Sabaa, name 3 expressions with the word money.
Money talks. Money is the root of all evil. Show me the money.
Show me the money. Okay, bonus question for Yara. What movie did Show Me the Money come from?
I don't.
Starring Tom Cruise, and Cuba Gooding Jr. won the Oscar for saying, "Show me the money, Jerry."
Mission Impossible? Just a Tom
Close.
At this point, I had
Sabaa, I'm not going to give you that one because I know you know it. It's Jerry Maguire. One of those. Okay, another movie question for either of you. Which movie character uttered that iconic phrase of the 1980s, "Greed is good"? Sabaa?
Gordon Gekko
Gordon Gekko, the film?
is Wall Street.
Yes, by Oliver Stone. Okay. I'm going to do a couple of musical questions. I'm going to get my guitar here. Hang on. Okay. So this is not going to do justice to any of these songs here, but let's see. These are songs about money. Who sings this? Money for nothing and your chicks for free.
Oh my goodness.
Who sings that?
Dire Straits.
Dire Straits. That's right. If I had $1 million, if I had $1 million. Do you know that one?
I do. If I had $1 million.
By?
I forget the name of the band, but we wrote an article on it.
Canadian band, like one of the big ones. They were banned from playing at first because of their name. It's been 1 week since you looked at me, cocked your head to the side, say I'm angry. Bare Naked Ladies.
Bare Naked Ladies.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a couple of easy ones to wrap this up here, Yara. What is this?
A very old Polaroid or like a film?
It's a slide from a slide projector.
Okay,
and I used to run my media on my shows on slides. And this is a shot of Mr. Burns from my show Mech Homer, which had The Simpsons do Macbeth. Okay, what is this bad boy?
A cassette.
Yeah, it's a cassette. Sorry, I'm not holding it up very well because I'm green screen there. There we go. It's a cassette. Okay, good. And what is this?
A floppy disk. I haven't seen one of those in forever.
And finally, Yara, who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
SpongeBob SquarePants.
And Sabaa, other than SpongeBob, name a character from SpongeBob.
Squidward.
You guys are so good. Okay, bravo. There'll be like little digital applause. Sabaa, Yara, thank you so much for playing along with the game, for filling up this time with such incredible intergenerational insight, and for just being lovely people to meet. So thank you both.
Thank you very much.
So when I release this thing, I will let you know and I'll send it to you, and I'm sure you'll use all the marketing tools at your disposal to promote it far and wide, because I certainly won't. So I'm not very good at that.
Your podcast will go viral overnight.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Well, not sure if anything I do will ever go viral, but we can always dream. Thanks for listening and sharing, folks, and thanks as always to my 2 guests, Sabaa Quao and Yara Matta. For more info about Sabaa and Yara's work, you can check out Wealthie.works and how to turn a gift card for a kid into a lifelong investment. My name is Rick Miller, and I wrote, recorded, and edited this episode with multimedia by my team at Kadoons. For more about the Boom Trilogy and our many other projects, visit kidunes.com or boomtheshow.com. Thanks also, as always, to my partners on this podcast, Leap, an online community where life experience meets innovation, created by CABI, the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation. For more info or to become a Leap member, visit cabi.com/leap. If you're on a podcast player, please follow us, write a review, tell someone about this or other episodes you liked. You can also send me any questions, comments, or feedback, Rick Miller Actor on Twitter or Instagram, or email rick@rickmiller.ca. And hey, in a polarized world, you have a choice. Build a wall or build a bridge. Build bridges, not walls.
XingTheGap.